Imagine living in a place that feels like a dream. A place where the neighbors smile when you walk by, where kids ride their bikes in the streets without a care in the world, where you think you've finally found peace. Now imagine, someone moves in, and slowly, that dream starts turning into a nightmare. Not overnight, but bit by bit, through letters, fines, and a fake smile that hides a very real hunger for power. My name is Daniel Carter, and this is the story of how the president of our HOA tried to destroy my life, and how, over the course of one unforgettable year, I turned the tables on him in the most satisfying way possible. This is my revenge story. Before everything went down, life was good. I bought my house in Austin, Texas about 7 years ago. I was 29 then, a software engineer who had just landed a stable remote job. The neighborhood was perfect for someone like me, quiet, safe, tree-lined streets, and honestly, everyone kind of knew each other. It wasn't some overly friendly, forced environment, just a bunch of decent people living their lives. My house wasn't huge, but it was mine. A single-story home with a little front yard and a white fence I'd painted myself. Every morning, I'd have coffee on my porch, watch kids waiting for the school bus, and wave to my neighbor, Linda, who had this adorable beagle that barked at everything but somehow still made everyone smile. On weekends, a few of us neighbors would gather in front lawns and chat, nothing crazy, just small-town suburban vibes. It felt stable. Like this was where I was going to spend the next few decades of my life. Our neighborhood had an HOA, Homeowners Association, like many places in the US. It wasn't overly strict, honestly. The board was run by 3 people back then: Marcia, a retired school teacher who acted as president, Ethan, a local plumber, and Veronica, who honestly only cared about the community garden. They weren't perfect, but they were fair. If someone painted their mailbox neon pink, they'd politely ask them to change it. If your lawn got too long, they'd send a reminder letter, not a $500 fine. It was manageable. I even went to one of their summer barbecues once. It was friendly, casual. Everyone chipped in for food. Ethan grilled burgers like a pro, Marcia told stories about the early days of the neighborhood, and Veronica made this legendary peach cobbler that disappeared in minutes. Those were good days. Then, one summer evening, I noticed a moving truck pulling up to one of the biggest houses on the street. That house had been empty for months after the previous owners moved to Florida. Out stepped Greg Miller, a tall, sharply dressed man in his late 50s with silver hair slicked back like a politician, and a smile that seemed practiced. He introduced himself to a few of us standing outside. His words were warm, but his eyes were cold. I don't know how to explain it, it's that gut feeling you get about someone. Greg shook hands firmly, asked a lot of questions about the HOA rules, and seemed especially interested in how things were managed around here. A week later, he hosted a welcome barbecue at his house. It was fancy, like over-the-top fancy. Hired caterers, decorations, music. He made a speech about how he believed communities needed strong leadership. At the time, most people thought he was just being enthusiastic. I wasn't sure. About a month later, Marcia announced she was stepping down as president because she was moving closer to her daughter. Ethan and Veronica didn't want the position. And guess who volunteered? Yep. Greg Miller. No one else ran against him. It was practically handed to him. He gave this whole speech about efficiency, structure, and improving community standards. Some people clapped. Some didn't care. I remember Linda whispering to me, "This guy gives me politician vibes." I laughed it off. Little did I know, she was absolutely right. It started small. I came home from work one evening to find a crisp white envelope taped to my door. HOA logo. Inside was a letter stating I had violated the community rules by planting sunflowers near my mailbox. Yes, sunflowers. Apparently, according to some obscure line in the HOA handbook, flowers over a certain height needed prior approval from the board. I'd been growing those sunflowers for years, even Marcia complimented them once. But now, suddenly, they were a problem. I thought it was a clerical mistake. I actually chuckled and tossed the letter aside, figuring I'd clear it up at the next meeting. A few days later, I saw Greg watering his perfectly trimmed hedges outside. I walked over, letter in hand, and said, "Hey Greg, I got this notice about the sunflowers, is this real?" He didn't even look surprised. He smiled that politician smile and said, "Oh, absolutely. Rules are rules, Daniel. We have to keep everything uniform, you know. It's nothing personal." I tried explaining that they'd been there for years, that Marcia never had a problem. He interrupted me mid-sentence. "Well, Marcia was lenient. I'm here to bring some structure back." His tone wasn't friendly. It was condescending. I forced a smile, said I'd take care of it, and walked away. That night, for the first time, I felt a twinge of something. Unease. I told myself I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew, this wasn't going to stop here. What I didn't realize then was that this was just the opening move in Greg Miller's little power game. A game that would stretch on for months. A game he thought he'd already won. But he didn't know me. I was patient. And when someone pushes me too far, I don't just push back. I take my time, and I make sure they regret it. And trust me, Greg Miller was about to regret everything. About 2 weeks after the flower letter, I came home to find another crisp white envelope taped to my front door. Same HOA logo. Same perfect typing. This time, the letter stated that my fence was 1 inch taller than the HOA height requirement, and I had 10 days to remedy the situation or face a $500 fine. My fence had been there since I moved in. It hadn't magically grown taller overnight. I measured it myself, it was exactly the allowed height. But according to Greg's letter, his measurement said otherwise. I walked over to his house that evening. He was standing on his porch with a clipboard, like some kind of self-appointed sheriff. The way he said it, that smugness, it made my blood boil. But I kept calm. I told him I'd look into it, and I walked away. That night, I started saving every single letter, photographing every envelope, keeping a log. Something told me I was going to need it. A month later, another letter. This time, trash cans. Apparently, I'd violated HOA rules by leaving my trash cans visible for longer than 10 minutes after pickup. The kicker. This happened while I was stuck in traffic because of a storm. The trash truck came early, and by the time I got home, Greg had already taken photos and sent me a $200 fine. I tried calling the HOA office to appeal it. But guess who answered the phone? Greg himself. He told me appeals were handled at the monthly board meeting, which he conveniently chaired. And at that meeting, he dismissed my appeal in under 2 minutes. No discussion. Just a gavel bang and a smug smile. It was like watching a dictator slowly tighten his grip. People started whispering, complaining quietly, but no one wanted to be the first to stand up to him. Everyone was scared of retaliation. The final straw came one humid afternoon in July. I got a letter stating that the paint on my mailbox post was fading unevenly, and I was being fined $150 unless I repainted it within 48 hours. It wasn't even fading. The sun had hit one side more than the other, like every other mailbox in the neighborhood. But Greg singled me out. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by a pile of envelopes, violation after violation, and I realized something: Greg wasn't going to stop. Not with me. Not with anyone. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. Power. Ego. One evening, Linda invited a few neighbors, Ethan, Veronica, and me, over to her backyard for lemonade. It wasn't a rebellion meeting, not yet. But the conversation turned serious fast, and that's when it clicked. This wasn't going to be a shouting match. This was going to be a chess game. And I was done playing checkers. From that moment on, every smile I gave Greg was fake. Every wave, every good morning, all part of the act. He thought he'd broken me. But what he didn't realize was, I was already laying the foundation for his downfall. He started this war. But I was going to finish it. By the time summer was ending, Greg had built himself an empire of fear. Every neighbor walked on eggshells. He was handing out fines like candy on Halloween. But what Greg didn't know was that I'd been quietly building something too. A case. Piece by piece. Violation by violation. He thought I'd given up. He thought I was just another neighbor bending to his rules. He couldn't have been more wrong. But just having evidence of my fines wasn't enough. I needed his violations. And I needed them to be undeniable. So I started walking my dog, a lot. Early mornings. Late evenings. Always with my phone camera ready. If Greg could watch me like a hawk, two could play that game. It didn't take long to find things. His shed. Built way beyond the property line. I measured it myself, using the official zoning map. His backyard patio. No drainage system, a clear violation of both city and HOA code. His exterior lights. Bright floodlights aimed straight into the street, violating light pollution guidelines. Oh, and his trash cans. Left out overnight. I had time-stamped pictures of everything. I knew going head-to-head with Greg at a board meeting wouldn't work. He controlled the board. He controlled the narrative. So I went over his head. I started sending anonymous reports to the city zoning department. Detailed emails with photos, maps, and code references. No emotion. Just facts. The first email was about his illegal patio. The second, about his shed encroaching on the easement. The third, about improper exterior lighting. I spaced them out over a few weeks, so it wouldn't look suspicious. Around the same time, I started working quietly with my neighbors. Linda was fed up. Ethan had received 5 fines in 1 month. Veronica's garden was practically on death row. I told them what I'd been doing. At first, they were skeptical, they thought Greg was untouchable. But when I showed them my dossier, their eyes lit up. From that day, I wasn't alone anymore. We became quiet observers. A network. Whenever Greg slipped up, someone caught it. We had photos from multiple angles, timestamps, even videos. It was beautiful. Next, I decided to dig into something Greg probably never thought anyone would check: the HOA's financial records. By law, HOA members have the right to review the budget and expenditures. So I filed a formal written request. Greg tried to stall, saying the records were being organized. But legally, he had to comply. 2 weeks later, I received scanned copies of the HOA's financials. And guess what? There were some, interesting. By this point, I had enough evidence to make his life miserable. But I didn't want to just slap him with a few fines. I wanted a complete, irreversible takedown. So I mapped out the plan like a timeline. The first domino fell one crisp October morning. A city inspector showed up at Greg's door. Clipboards. Cameras. Measuring tape. I watched from my porch as Greg tried to charm his way through the inspection. It didn't work. They measured the shed. Took photos of the patio. Noted the lights. By the time they left, Greg's fake smile was gone. 2 weeks later, the city issued multiple violation notices and fines. It wasn't small either, thousands of dollars. Greg tried to keep it quiet, but in a small neighborhood, news travels fast. For the first time, Greg wasn't smiling at the board meetings. He wasn't handing out fines with the same confidence. He was distracted. Nervous. But this was only the beginning. The real blow hadn't landed yet. I'd built my trap, and now, it was time to spring it. By late November, everything was in place. Greg had received multiple city fines. His picture-perfect HOA presidency was starting to crack. But cracks weren't enough. I wanted it to collapse. So I submitted a formal request for a special board meeting. According to HOA bylaws, if enough members signed a petition, the board was legally required to hold a public meeting to address concerns. And thanks to Linda, Ethan, Veronica, and nearly half the neighborhood, we had more than enough signatures. A week later, a notice appeared in everyone's mailbox: special HOA meeting, agenda, leadership review, ethics complaints, community concerns. Greg tried to sound confident when he knocked on doors, assuring everyone it was routine business. But his forced smile told another story. He was nervous. And for the first time, he had every reason to be. The night of the meeting, the community hall was packed. Normally, HOA meetings had maybe 5 board people and some cookies. This time, standing room only. Greg walked to the front in his usual polo shirt, clipboard in hand, trying to look composed. But his hands were shaking. The board members sat beside him, unsure of what was coming. The meeting began, and then the fireworks started. When public comments opened, Linda stood first. She brought a projector and laptop. Oh yes, we came prepared. The screen lit up with the first slide, photos of Greg's shed, clearly over the property line, with a zoning map overlay. Gasps filled the room. Then came the patio violations, light code violations, and city inspector reports. Each slide was dated, labeled, and undeniable. The board's faces turned pale. Greg's forced smile completely vanished. But that wasn't the knockout punch. That came when Veronica pulled out the HOA financial statements. She'd highlighted every suspicious transaction. Names. Dates. Amounts. Even the consulting fee to Greg's wife's company. The room went silent. The rest happened fast. The board called for a closed-door vote right then and there. 20 minutes later, Greg walked out, red-faced, avoiding everyone's eyes. A board member returned to the podium and announced, in the following weeks, Greg's house became quieter. The floodlights were removed. The shed got demolished. His wife's company quietly dissolved. The city fines hit hard, and the HOA's audit uncovered more creative accounting that forced him to pay restitution. He eventually moved out within 6 months. As for the neighborhood, things changed. No more random fines. No more intimidation. The new board focused on actual improvements, not power trips. People started talking to each other again. It felt like a community, not a dictatorship. Looking back, I could have confronted Greg early on. Yelled at him. Slammed doors. But that's not how you beat someone who hides behind rules. You beat them with their own rules. Quietly. Patiently. Precisely. In the end, Greg wasn't taken down by anger. He was taken down by evidence, strategy, and a neighborhood that refused to stay silent. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. Finally, if you liked this story, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Stay happy and prosperous.